I am such a fan of all three of you. It is delightful to have you all here. Um, so I'm going to start with Lindsay Jenkins, who goes by LJ. She is a dramaturg, a producer, an educator, and a writer based in Los Angeles by way of Dallas, Texas. She's the founder and executive creative producer of Maroon Arts and Culture, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowerment through arts education and cultural programming. And CTG is proud to partner with Maroon Arts and Culture for the Fall Working in Theater series. And LJ is going to host that series. Yay! Um, so LJ, I see you have your pronouns under your name, but would you mind sharing your pronouns? And then we've been asking everyone for a theater experience that has continued to live in them or resonate with them. Would you mind sharing that?
Sure. So my name is LJ. My pronouns are she, hers. A theater experience that has resonated with me. Well, yesterday we were talking about church plays. I don't know, I'm from the South. So my first experience with the theater was at church. And, it was my first time understanding the collaborative nature of theater, because with your church play, it's not big budget. It's, everybody's moms and aunts coming together, sewing costumes at the houses and bringing them up to the church. And so for me, that was my first time really understanding how collaborative theater is, and how it relies on the work of the many in order to put the show up. And so that's kind of something that's always stuck with me.
That's awesome. Thank you, LJ. Our next guest is Serena Johnson. She is a career coach and her values are rooted in feminist, diverse, and egalitarian springboard for all who find themselves facing the all too familiar problem of, I need to leave this job, but I have no idea what to do next. She has an incredible coaching program called Get Me Out of This Job, and she motivates and nurtures those who are exhausted, burnt out, and demoralized toward a new kind of career clarity. Such important work. Serena, can you share your pronouns and tell us about what that theater experience is that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I'm she, her, hers. Um, One that has like really stuck with me. I can't remember honestly if it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago. Some of you might remember. I was at Shakespeare in the Park, and all of we were going through like power outages, or there was like in the city, and like all the lights went out and it was dark, and so you couldn't see the actors on the stage. They were in the middle of a scene, and then everyone pulled out their phones and turned their flashlights on, and like collectively, like it was over like 1,000 people, I think, or something like that, shining these lights on these actors so they could at least like see the stairs outside. And it was just, looking back on it now, especially since like we can't gather, the importance of gathering, and also how theater is just really a community. Like even the audience is part just as important as the actors on the stage. And someone in the chat was there. Yeah, it was so magical and just like tingling, and it was beautiful. And the actors afterwards posted pictures from like their view also, and it was really cool. And that is really resonating with me now, because we would be out there enjoying Shakespeare, right, in the park, and gathering with our community. But that was a truly magical moment.
I remember seeing pictures of that. That's such a cool one.
So cool.
And last, alphabetically, but certainly not least, is Elena Muslar. She's a career and mindset coach for changemakers and trailblazers at the individual and organizational levels. She has educated and empowered thousands of clients, leading the charge in arts, entertainment, cultural, and creative industries. Her personal philosophy is rooted in three pillars: workforce equity, racial justice, and radical self-care. Elena, will you give us your pronouns and whatever comes to mind for you for your theater experience?
For sure. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Drop a hey in the chat. I love interaction and connection. So just really glad and pleased to be here. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And as I was listening to my esteemed fellow panelists, I connected to both of them because I grew up doing theater in a church. That was where my theater company was, starting from like age 7 on up, all African-American musical theater called Town Street Theater. And then then I connected to Serena because I actually was in a performance where all the lights went out. And yeah, and that was in high school. And I was ironically playing a slave, which, you know, there's stuff tied up in that. But I was playing a slave in this show. It was a Shakespeare show, Taming of the Shrew. And I was Biondella in the show. And during when the moment the lights went out happened, I was on stage with my master, and I took the stage. Even though it was dark, I took the scene in my hands and I held my friend / master and ran. And even though it was dark, I was like, "Master, I'm scared." And then the whole audience started roaring with laughter. And it was super cool because it kind of like gave brevity to the situation in character. It's like, you know, the saying says the show must go on. So like the show didn't stop just because the lights went out. Tech was in the back and they ended up making everything come back on. The lights went up. And literally to this day, every time I go back to my old theater, which was at Loyola High School, everyone's like, "You remember that time when it was dark and then you was like, the lights?" And I was like, "Yeah, I still remember that time. Yes, I do." So I connect to theater in so many different ways, but I figured I'd piggyback off of the two here.
I love it. I love it.
Going back story.
I'm really excited to have all three of you here. All three of you work with emerging professionals in slightly different contexts. I wonder if you think about like, what is the piece of advice that you give most often? Or what is the thing that like when somebody comes to see you that you find yourself saying the most, like especially to people who are emerging theater professionals? Does anything come into your mind for any of you?
Yeah, I think that for me, one thing that I always try to impart on people is that you don't have to rush into things. I feel like a lot of times the way that we have things set up in terms of going from high school to college and college to career, it's kind of a fast track. And I just can't imagine any other circumstance where you would ask somebody at a young age to make lifelong decisions the way that we ask people to do in school. And I also find too that if you're in a university program, a university theater program, you may not even know all of the roles within the theater that are available to you by the time you graduate. And so I say, take your time, try a little bit of everything. Don't get married to one thing right away, because there could be something out there that you don't even know that you like. For me, for example, it was dramaturgy. I was in a master's program before I even knew that that was a job to have. So, so yeah, just take your time and don't feel pressure to rush.
Thank you for that. That really resonates with me. And I think you and I have talked about that before, is that there are so many jobs in theater or in the arts or in the creative industries. And when you're in programs, even master's programs, you are not introduced to the full range of them. So yeah, that's yes. Okay, I want to get back to this like nonlinear career concept, because we had a question about that, but I want to hear from Elena or Serena next.
Sure. So one of the things I say very often to my students and clients is that I actually believe that college only teaches us 3 things. Teaches us how to write, how to research, and how to communicate. And you do those 3 things through the lens of whatever your major, falls out of the sky and decides to be. Sometimes your parents tell you that's the major you have to do. Sometimes you've told yourself that that's the major you have to do. But at the end of the day, the major does not define you. You define it. And so if you choose to really take ownership of that major or of that specific career interest that you might have or industry you want to get into, then you have to think about, well, am I using the skills that I've developed through all of these homework assignments and all of these things on campus and all of these leadership experiences I've had? And now you need to redo that same skill set and put that into your career. So if you research for some paper, you didn't know why you were writing it. The point of it was practice. Now go research the jobs that you actually want to get. If you haven't heard of the name of the job, go figure it out. Go keep digging, digging, digging. Research is just glorified stalking, so go have fun with it. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you know how to write, because the whole point of writing all these random papers in college is to get you really confident in your skill set around, can I make things make sense for other people who read it? So the resume, that's the first page, that's the first representation of your voice on paper. So making sure you're actually reading that and it's robust while still concise. Those are things that I like to make sure are really like honed in on for my students and clients. And then when it comes to communication, if you're not practicing that in a safe place where you can totally fail and it's just like a grade that's not going to matter in 10 years between you, like just do it. Talk in front of people. These skills are going to help you in meetings, going to help you in the email communication for the job you're going to need, and going to help you in the grant application that you need to write, and going to help you with literally getting the opportunities that you say you want. You have to use the practice field that you're in order to develop the skill set so you can funnel that into what you actually want to do for the future.
You know what really is, yes, I love that framework. And it also makes me think about how your major is important. Not saying your major isn't important, but it's not the end all and be all. And I think that's something that we can also get really kind of stuck in. And a lot of programs are designed that way, that it's very like, oh, you're a director, so all your time or a lot of your time is spent in this, when actually that falls away for the majority of people post-graduation, and it becomes more about these skill sets. I love that. Serena, what about you in your practice? What comes up a lot?
I feel like defining your own version of success is so important, because it's really easy going back to, like, again, you were like, LJ, you were talking like, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then you get the job, and then you like climb there's a very specific pathway that we feel like we have to follow when picking a major, or even just picking our career, and identifying what success means for you, not what your parents think, not what society tells you, not what your industry really tells you, but what makes you happy as a human, is pivotal, because it's really easy to think you're taking too long, that you're not taking the right steps, that you're not like making the right moves, when really you're just making the right moves for you as a human. Like, it took me 8.5 years to get my bachelor's, like in opera. So like, what does that say? I get to make a choice about whether or not that says that like I was slow in college, or I just took my time and I came out of it the way I wanted. And like, we all have those choices, and it's really easy to judge ourselves. So like, starting with defining like, what is success, and like, what does that look like on each journey, will help you also from not making choices in your career that make you unhappy, because that's how we end up in burnout, is when we make choices that are against the grains of what we define as success or successful.
I really like that framing. And you said success as framed as what makes you happy. And that is so, I mean, it sounds so simple, but I don't feel like that's the way that we're taught to view success. Success is something extrinsic or title or something. And I think I've spoken before in this series about feeling kind of, I don't know, less than, especially when I was getting my master's, because the people around me seemed to be like, I want to be an executive director, I want to be an artistic director. And I was like, I want to be involved with theater. Like I felt, yeah, I was like, well, should I be more like ambitious? Do I need that? So but flipping it to be about your happiness, that's a way in, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
I think ambition also resides within. Um, it's not something that has to be like equated to what society tells you need to have the ambition to do. And those influences can come from a variety of different directions. They can come from professors, they can come from counselors, they can even come from coaches, because some coaches aren't there to necessarily serve you. Sometimes they just like to hear themselves talk. So like also make sure that wherever your sources of knowledge are coming from, you're sifting through that knowledge in order to really discern what's most important for me and the trajectory that I want to make sure that I'm on, while I get different sources, different source material for my dissertation of life. Like like simmer on it.
That reminds me, there's a phrase that came up when we were having a prep call, which was choosing spaces consciously.
Mm-hmm.
So choosing the spaces that you move into, that you put yourself in, either professionally or artistically. And we kind of acknowledge that there's some tension there around, like, especially if you're early career, you feel like you don't have a lot of power. How do you reconcile the need to pay rent with this desire to like really own your spaces and to walk in your values? I don't know if people have thoughts about that.
I always have thoughts, but like I'll let someone else speak because I just spoke.
I want to hear Elena's thoughts.
Elena, go first.
Oh, fudge. Well, now I'm like, what was the question again? Because I had thoughts. Say it again.
It's about choosing spaces consciously, but if you're early career, sometimes that there's
Rent.
rent.
Yeah. So the big thing that I sort of like to help early career folks look at is like, where's the space between your creative goals and your like and potentially a complementary career you want to embed into your life to reach your creative goals. Oftentimes people look at their creative career as the only thing that they're capable of and the only thing that's going to give them value or worth in the world. It's not true. You can still do that work while simultaneously doing something that serves a segment of your soul. That doesn't have to be like debilitating work or like soul sucking work or sellout work, or like the reputation of what a quote actor does on the side. You don't have to wait tables if you don't want to wait tables. If you love that, if you like talking to people, if you think you're going to get some good stories out of there and you're a playwright, you better go be at the bar and like mix them drinks, because you could get a lot out of people and that could be good fodder for your work. So I encourage my clients to look at like, what's a complementary career, whether it's in whatever industry under the sun, that you can do that can build income for what you want to pursue in a creative sphere. Because if that isn't already making you money, then we have to diversify your sources of income, and you have to look at what does that actually look like for you. Where are you receiving multiple streams of income, not just one? That's really kind of what I've built my whole career on. Like, y'all know I got like 12 jobs, but like, and so like, where are you getting money from in different places in order to keep your leveling up who you want to be in the world?
And also piggybacking on just pointing that out, when you diversify your income, when things like COVID happen and one income stream just completely dries up out of the blue, you have something else you have other things you've been putting away in piggy banks around, because you're able to like, okay, I'm going to pivot to this a lot just for the moment, because this is going to help sustain me while the world is figuring out this nonsense right over here. And that is so important. It's interesting that we think that like almost 9-to-5s are like the stable ones. I think if COVID has taught me anything, that it's like, that's not true anymore, because it can just dry up. That's a topic for a different time, but I just wanted to point that out because I think it's really we don't think about that we could have multiple streams of income at once, right? We have to have one specific thing that's happening at any given time. And it's smart to have lots of different options on the table, different ways to make money.
Yes, and I totally, I feel what everyone is saying. I'm a true millennial, so I am the queen of the gig economy. You know, I'm like, bring on all the streams of income. You know, yeah, I need all of it, and so I think that that's one thing that I've been working on for the past year or so. Like, how can I put myself out there as a person that does artistic research? And, you know, even though I'm a dramaturg, so ideally I do that for the theater, and I love working on new plays, and I love working at, you know, universities, helping people develop theater work. But if I zoom out on dramaturgy and call myself an artistic researcher, now I've opened myself up to film and television jobs. I've opened myself up to helping people make research packets for books. You know, I've made study guides for people. And so even though theater is my passion, you know, I can't do nothing but be honest. Theater is sometimes the lowest paying, you know, job on the entertainment roster. But if you can find a way to leverage your theater work into another area of entertainment, you know, kind of bring it all together. And I was also going to say, I don't remember what I was going to say, but the complementary careers. Like one thing I do is I'm a yoga instructor, right? And so even though that's not necessarily a theater job, it does help me, you know, lead warm-ups when I'm with students. You know, I've got extra tools in my tool belt when I do come to the theater. So yeah.
And it helps your well-being, which is super
And
important for all creatives.
It helps my well-being, and it helps my actors that I work with. You know, I have things that I can offer them, you know, that will be helpful to them. And honestly, it's influenced my position, my position as an artist, which is that, you know, even as a person that does research, there are other ways to give people information besides text. And so, you know, you can use your outside influences to kind of shore up your theater perspective too. I'm the queen of getting that rent paid. I don't play when it comes to that.
Well, I mean, you started Maroon Arts and Culture in the past year, and you were saying that you have had to I can't remember how you put it, but basically shift to meet the pivot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good word of pivot. What have you done with Maroon Arts and Culture to kind of meet that change and meet the needs of the external environment?
Well, one thing that we're doing is partnering with Center Theater Group on this Working in Theater program, which is really exciting for us because, you know, our mission is to encourage the emerging artists of the future. And, you know, one way we wanted to do that pre-COVID was by helping people produce work. And so since in-person events are kind of on hold for the foreseeable future, the question is, how can you help people produce work that's not necessarily like giving the money and, you know, setting the stage, you know, and providing information and encouraging people to do things on their own and empowering people to have the tools that they need to produce work wherever they are, is definitely within the mission. But, you know, you got to kind of got to change up the format, as you well know. And then also, you know, one thing I was really excited about was after school programming. You know, we wanted to go in and provide some theater programming for elementary and middle schools, but we've just kind of had to shift that to now online. So we'll be offering some online classes in the fall, but I think that it'll still work out just as well. You know, everybody, especially students, everybody is pivoting right now. So, you know, it's, if you offer it, they will come. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that my work is really based in like identifying your strengths and using those as a guide, because again, I think this like exactly with the complementary career, like your strengths are not siloed to one specific place. And like, if you need to pay your rent, that you can find a job that doesn't exhaust you and doesn't deplete you by focusing on what you are actually good at, not focusing like trying to put yourself into a pretzel for whatever job's in front of you, but really stopping and thinking like, okay, what do I enjoy doing? What do I love doing? Like, obviously we love theater, right? But what parts of theater do I do I enjoy? Is it producing? Because so if you're great at producing, that means you're organized as all hell. And like, right, like you're going to make sure things get done. So like, how can you, that is your transferable skill right there, right? And so how can you apply that and find a job where that is going to be the main part of your work? And that's going to, you know, it's going to actually, it's not going to deplete you. It's going to energize you. And yes, it might not be perfect in the sense that it might not, like, and it's not theater, right? It's not in that realm, but it's not going to make you exhausted. And Elena, I think that's a great example. Like, I love serving. I love it. I enjoy it. I love meeting people and talking with them. So it's always been a fallback for me because it's not exhausting. And so, and like do something that isn't going to deplete you and find out and like leverage those very specific strengths, because that you can create a career just based off of your strengths and let that guide you into where you want to go, and add things as you move through. So that's really important for me when I work with my clients, is to identifying that.
Mm-hmm.
And Serena, I wonder, I mean, you're talking about depletion, you're talking about kind of the emotional energy that maybe you get from or that is sucked out of you from your job. One of your focus areas is, I mean, your program is called Get Me Out of This Job. When, and I, this may sound like an obvious question, but I don't think it's an obvious question. And having been in a position where I'm like, I don't know if I should leave this job or not. What are some signs that somebody needs to really think about moving on from their job or making a change in some way?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Most of my clients come to me when they usually use the words like my simple to-do list feels like Mount Everest. It feels like these basic tasks are making me feel exhausted. They take forever to get through. You're feeling not just disenchanted with the work, but quite literally feeling fatigued and exhausted by the end of the day off of simple things. And maybe you're showing up, you know, the Sunday scaries are like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you're like, just get me to the weekend. And your attitude suffers, right? Like you go in a bad mood, you leave in a bad mood. Nothing is really exciting you. And I like depletion is the best word I think that you can like, that I can think of, because it's literally taking energy away from you. And there's nothing that's filling your cup anymore. And you're just starting on empty every day. And I think that a lot of people get to that place because, you know, there's a multitude of reasons, but primarily it's because we end up in jobs that aren't really, they're not suited for us, right? And we just like want a job to like get a job. And that's super important. If you have to pay your rent and you need to feed yourself, yes. But like, it's exhausting to try and find a job when you're in that place of like, I'm so tired at the end of the day. I don't have the space to go look or to invest in my career. And I think that's really, I mean, that's like at the end of like, right. Like that's a huge sign that some things need to change. And we got to like take a step back and be like, what is it about this job that is making you, that's not fitting, right? And we like to blame the jobs. We sometimes like to blame our employers, and like everyone shares responsibility for it. But a lot of times it's just because it's not the right fit, and you're doing things that like your values are not aligned, your non-negotiables around work, you're probably underpaid and overworked, right? Maybe there's some boundaries that need to be set, like from, you know, personally need to be set around like you're answering emails late at night and you need to be like, I'm done at 6. Not taking lunches. That's a lot of us, right? And like, again, you're not working within your strengths. And these are all areas that you have to kind of figure out and understand what isn't working. And sometimes you can change that in your job, right? You can make those changes and have conversations with your boss. If you have good managers, because they want you to be happy, right? To make those shifts. But it's really easy to slip into that, like, I'm not smart, not talented, not good enough to work because I can't do my to-do list. And I'm just here to tell you that that's not true. You are talented and smart and capable and all of those things. It's just probably not the right space for you. And that's okay. We can move on from that. But that's what I see the most of.
That makes a lot of sense. And also, I've had a couple of jobs where I realized a little too late, I think, that it was time for me to
Mhm.
leave,
Yes.
and then kind of reflected on the negative energy that I was bringing with me into those spaces. And that it wasn't like it was time for me to leave, but it was also like the best thing for everybody for me to leave. Like,
Yes.
you're not doing anybody any favors if you are miserable. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's and I know that sometimes in the arts too, you can feel like, oh, everything's gonna fall apart without me.
Not true.
Not true.
Not,
You
it's
are
not
not that.
rocket science. It's
No,
not, no,
someone
it's
else.
not life or death. Like, live
They
your
want to
life
replace you.
before you get to death. Like, because people out here thinking that the theater is the end all be all. And I think that, like, it's probably the community or the people or your empathy or like things that are tying you to that place that aren't actually about the literal like work that you're doing.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes I find that people just haven't carved out the space to do the deep digging that they need to
Yes.
do internally in order to understand what they should be doing externally.
All
Mhm.
starts with you. How crazy, right? We always put it on like the passion or the thing or the career, and like truly like career happiness, like it's, you got to dig deep and like really set some boundaries with yourself and what you want, and then and then you can launch from there, and like extraordinary things will happen.
So the
But it's
thing is,
all back
it's
here.
it's so easy though. That's why I think people go to the like, well, this is just what it is. It's
Mhm.
easy to do that.
Oh
It's
yeah.
hard to meet yourself in the mirror.
Hmm.
The second you actually become aware of that, that you're the person you need to unpack, that there's all these problems around you and the common thread is what? You. That's a hard thing for a lot of people to face. So it's so much easier to just kind of ignore it, keep it moving. Let me stay on my grind. I'm a hustler. I'm grinding. I'm doing the work. These people don't understand it, not giving me enough credit. But maybe you need to change your approach,
Mhm.
because understanding the environment that you're working in is a big part of being able to navigate a career that is in alignment with what you define success to be.
Yes.
So
100%.
if I could just add on to that, because I'm coming at this from an entrepreneurial position. Like I just started an organization because I have found it I've found it more and more difficult to be in positions where I feel like I'm suffering microaggressions, meaning that policing my tone, saying like, oh, you seem really angry in this email. Well, it's an email. How could you possibly think that I sound angry in an email? Talking to me about the way that I wear my hair, my nails, or whatever. These little like microaggressions, I have found, that I just can't deal with them anymore. And I just, once you get into that mind frame and you call them out, then you kind of have like a target on your back at that point. This is my experience anyway. And so because of that, I have found that not only have I had to leave jobs, but I have had to carve out a space for myself so that I can do my work in a way that is not impeded by those things. And so I think that, yes, dealing with microaggressions is about your work environment around you, but it's also like Elena said, like, you got to come home and look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I can't put up with this no more.
That's not for me. These people don't deserve me.
Like
Bye-bye.
I just cannot do it anymore. And so once I finally, came to that conclusion, and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm tired of being the person that has to talk to people about this all the time. And it's like, even though I can do it in a way that's professional and even keeled, and even though there have been times where it has been helpful, as far as me and my mental health are concerned, I felt like I just can't do it anymore. So yeah, that's kind of how I know it's time to move on to the next thing.
And so many people are moving to entrepreneurship because of that very reason. The institutions aren't changing fast enough and pivoting enough. And like, there are places where like, but it feels like they're like unicorns sometimes to find. And I'm a millennial as well. And like, the numbers, you know, for people who are starting their own businesses or starting to move to freelancing are insane because of that. And people are starting to take stock of what they want. And they're like, I don't see it. And so I'm just going to go create it. And the gig economy and it's growing exponentially since I think 2008, basically, whenever there's a recession, whenever there's some, you know, type of like any type of like financial crisis, like people are going to try and find ways to be an entrepreneur. And, you know, that's why I left. That's why I started my own business. Cause I was like, I gotta do my own thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense.
I'd like to add in here because I kind of take a both and approach to this. So I do work at an institution, specifically higher education institution, which has a lot of red tape and bureaucratic this and political that. And it's hard being in the space where things are sort of regulated and policed to a certain extent, especially being a Black woman in that space. But I'm also, the university I work at, I'm also an alum of. So I have this interesting dual perspective on things, the experience of what it's like being a student and what it's like being on the inside. And so I have also found that throughout my career, I take an approach where I'm able to understand things from multiple perspectives and sides. Because when I first started working in arts administration, I used to say, well, I want to work at a large scale theater company so I can infiltrate. So I can go in and I can like up in the system right underneath their eyes and they won't even know it's happening. And I've done that. I've done that at different organizations where I've advocated for pay equity for artists, where I've, you know, created programming that's never been seen in a predominantly white institution, where I, you know, done things that have pushed the system on, well, why aren't you practicing what you say you preach when it comes to racial justice in what you present, you know, things of this nature. And so I do believe that if you are interested in working at an organization, an institution, a company, and you realize that there is, you know, that bullet point where it says other duties as assigned, you know, you can assign those duties to yourself too. So, you know, for my wonderful, well-meaning white people who are here now to fight the system, assign yourself a duty. Recognize that, like, when you're in these institutions, you can be the person that speaks up in the meeting. You can be the person that notices that y'all use the same Black person on all your marketing materials and it's tokenizing. You can be the person that says, I notice we only promote our African-American theater shows in African-American based communities. Why is that? You can be the person that does the work that they say they're trying to uphold and then call them on the fact that this is one of the things in your values. This is one of the things in your mission statement. This is one of the things. So clap it back to what they saying that they're getting money from. Like, don't they write all these, you know, things for the donors and all that stuff. And so it's important for employees to hold leadership accountable. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of why I don't just coach clients individually. I also consult organizations who are struggling with some of these things because they know that they want to make change. And also, people have to remember an organization is just a bunch of individuals together. So like, my goal as a coach is to work on the individual within the organization so the individuals can up in the system that society has placed on them that is disenfranchising people who are supposed to be taking advantage of what the system is offering them. So I think that if you take an entrepreneurial approach, I think that's fantastic because you're creating new examples for what the system can be, or you're upending it and there is no system and it's just a free-for-all, and that's also awesome. Or you can work within and change these cultures because the culture is made by the people. it's not some amorphous thing. Like, we have to have the right people in these places too to change the system. So that's a big part of the reason I do what I do. And I like to help people do what they do better.
I love that. I feel like the theme of all this is like, you are in control of your choices and your career. Like,
as long as you choose it.
As long as you choose it, but you can choose whichever path you take, and you are capable of making these choices. And like, I think especially when we're early career, we forget that we have power, and we forget that we have a voice, and like, we kind of make ourselves smaller, right, to fit in an organization. But you do have power, and you can step into it. And like, sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable as all hell, and sometimes it might not work out the way that you want to, but like, it's important to know that you have choices, and you get to choose how you feel, how you act, how you participate, what you take on. Like, those are all, you have so much more autonomy than we think that we do. And like, whichever way you want to take it is fine, right? As you do you, like, always you do you, right? Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah.
And imposter syndrome is a real thing, honey.
Oh, yes,
like, you know, we all have probably suffered from it at some point in time. I mean, this is a panel of women here. So, you know, there's a dynamic there. And then, you know, we've got Black women here, and there's another dynamic there. And then, you know, if you're LGBTQ, there's another layer of dynamic there. So like, considering all these things that may sometimes make us feel like, well, are we good enough? Am I good enough? Am I allowed to even be in this space? I felt that a lot throughout my career. Should I even be in this meeting? And should I even speak up in this meeting? All of these things are answers that we have to kind of give ourselves the answer to. We have to give ourselves permission, because ain't nobody else gonna do it for you. Everybody else gonna be talking and rising, and you just gonna be like, wow, they're amazing. But if you make a conscious effort to be like, okay, I wanna be amazing too, then just start trying, start speaking up, start talking with someone who inspires you, who motivates you, who helps you see the best in yourself. And I always say, like, you should surround yourself with like your own personal board of directors.
Yes.
So like, who are those people that amp you up, that invest in your well-being, that champion you, that make sure that you gonna know about that next gig or that next opportunity? Like, you got different people for different things, and they all don't just give you money. Only one person probably gives you money, and that might just be your mama, because she still loves you. Like, there's other people who come and help you for different things. So just considering that for sure. And I also always want people to recognize that the interview always goes both ways.
Yes.
Whether you are an entrepreneur who is interviewing your next client, or you are somebody who's interviewing for a job, that's actually the place where you get to set your standards. And if you don't do that in the interview, you are now actually setting yourself up for an environment that you may not be able to thrive in, because you haven't taken the opportunity to set the foundation for what you best thrive off of. So in the interview, make sure you're coming up with bomb questions that actually dig deep into those values, into those mission statements, and all the stuff they say that they're really about. Like, check them.
Yeah. Don't ask just what the environment, right? Like, oh, what is your culture like? Because that's a way for them to just coast, being like, how do you show like appreciation for your staff? What is your communication style? How do we make large decisions in this company? Do I have a voice in that? Like, asking very specific questions. I love that when I learned that I could have control over my interviews, that like blew my mind, right? Like, when I started interviewing my interviewer, that also blows their mind, because they're not expecting it. They'll be like, what? Okay. Like, it's going to make you look better in the long run, right? Mm-hmm. It shares the power of the situation, right? Because like, you don't want to don't end up in a job. Don't take a job that you're not setting yourself up for success. And if you know that company isn't going to set you up for success and isn't in alignment with what you want, then like,
bye, Felicia.
That's a recipe for like so much sadness and like unhappiness.
It's also like, if there are things that come up during the interview that are red flags, like, let's say you do ask a question and they're like they get uncomfortable about it, or like, I have heard so many stories from early career folks. There was one person who was like, okay, can I get 48 hours to think about it? Because they actually gave a verbal offer at the end of the interview, and they rescinded the offer.
Yes.
Which is not okay.
No.
Or, you know,
It can make someone feel like it's supposed, like, is something wrong with me? Did I ask the wrong question? Same thing with negotiation. If you're like,
yes,
oh, I'd love to open the conversation up for, you know, what the pay is going to be. If you don't do that, you're setting everyone else back. This is why the theater world doesn't make money, because not enough people have advocated for it. And so the unions, the grant makers, they don't have enough because the people aren't doing the work of saying when they need it in specific moments, not just for a project or a program, but for your operations, for your people, for your capital, for all of these other things.
What happens if all the organizations just decided to just only apply for Gen Ops funding? Like everyone made a collective decision to be like, not mention programs and just be like, we're just asking for money. And everyone's like, no, but we have to fund programs. Be like, too bad. We need money for Gen Ops. Like, how much power would that, what would change funders if like everyone was like, no, not doing it?
I actually was going to see if we could maybe like get some advice on from our career coaches on asking for money, because I know that in my experience, the more you practice asking for more money, the better. There will never be a time. My mom's an entrepreneur too, so she let me know at an early age, like, don't be afraid to ask for the money that you want, and don't be afraid to bring it up. So do you guys have any advice for our emerging professionals on how to ask for the money that they need to pay that rent?
Yeah. I mean, always negotiate. That's like, I feel like one of my pillars of creating your own career is always negotiate. Even if you feel like it is the most money you have ever made in your life. I've had clients who've been like, I just took the offer because it's more than I expected. And I was like, no, why didn't you call me? No, always negotiate, because there's practice in that, right? Like you said, right? I would equally say have a number in your head, right? Do some research, ask around, right? See what the going rate is for your industry. I am very big on asking people how much they make. It makes people feel really awkward. But I'm like, how much money are you making in this? Like, ask my peers, ask everyone. I want to know how much you are making so I can understand what the landscape looks like. So like, do your research, figure out what the landscape looks like, have a number, have a low number and a high, right? Have a range that you like your bare minimum, that you are not going to go lower than this. And always negotiate. I feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff I could ask about, but Elena, do you have, there's like so much we could talk about for massive.
Yeah, I would say the number one is kind of encapsulating something you said, but I believe the entire arts nonprofit industry has to normalize financial literacy.
Yeah.
It's something that isn't taught at the level that people need to sit with it in. We teach about money from a standpoint of fear and from a scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough. I don't have enough. I'm never going to make enough. How am I going to make enough? Oh my God, they gave me enough. What? and so like, but also what is enough? Have you really done the digging to imagine or envision what's more than enough? And how would you actually start to utilize what's more than enough for what it is that you need for your company, your business, your individual self, your family? All of these things are considerations that need to be a part of our thinking as professionals. And a lot of times people separate the personal from the professional, but the personal is what will guide your professional. And so you have to sort of do some of that reflection of like, well, what is it that I actually wish I could make? That's one number, what you wish you can make. A second number, well, what do I want to make? Let's be real. Like, what do I just want to make that's going to make me feel like, I'm doing my thing. Yeah, I got enough. I'm paying my bills. I'm able to like go out for a drink, whatever it might be. Like, what do you want? Then what is your walk? what is the number that someone gives to you where you're like, girl, bye.
Bye.
No. So that's something I've learned and I've sort of taken throughout my career in every negotiation. What's my wish, my want, and my walk? So then if you're clear on your walk, you can potentially even state that or leave clues for the walk in interview, in first meeting. And so, you know, most of my clients I work with, you know, pay me at least $250 an hour. Boom. They're like, oh, okay, well, let me go start saving up. You know, so people hear that and then they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, but if you want to work with me on a program or in a different capacity, those rates might go up, or they might be able to work out a payment plan over a period of time. Like, these are things that you want to just start to get comfortable talking about. So like, that's my example for me. But for other people, it's going to be a different thing when you're in the room with the person and you're negotiating your first salary. And so having a clear idea by doing what research, what being clear on how you write in case you need to write back your negotiation in an email, and also potentially being able to communicate it in the moment. There's a big difference between being in that room, the example of what Camille gave a minute ago, of saying like, oh, I would love 48 hours to think about the offer. Thank you so much. And saying, I really appreciate your offer. I want to take some time to really consider everything that I know that I'm going to be able to bring to you guys, and then come back and give you my acceptance, or let you know if there's anything different that I've decided. Can I have you know, like 2 days? I'd get back to you by this time on this day with my final decision. How you speak communicates volumes.
Mm-hmm.
You can say the same thing with confidence one way, and you could say the same thing with zero confidence the other way, and the way the person takes it is going to be very different. If a person hears you say that in a confident way, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Like, they're going to take the downward kind of status. So you could flip that on them. So yeah, those are some things I would recommend.
I love that. I totally agree with everything you say. Like, saying it with confidence. Like, it's so scary the first time you negotiate, right? That fear, like, I know that fear. You're like, there's so much wrapped in it. And even after you put the offer out there for what you know you're worth, like the mind gremlins, as I call them, are going to be swimming around telling you all sorts of things. And just like being able to stick to that number is so huge. Like, I feel like if anywhere to start, like knowing that number that you're like, no, this is not, I am worth this. I'm worth this. I'm walking at this number, and sticking to it is like, it's showing up for yourself, and it's valuing yourself. And that is going to do so much more for who you are in your career journey than accepting lower pay. Like, showing up for yourself in that way is huge, and it can be really hard and scary. But I wanted to echo that, because it takes practice. So get used to getting out and failing a little bit. It's fun. It's fun when you get on the risk train, right?
The risk train. I just checked in with LJ to make sure that she is okay with us talking about this, but we have a real life example.
Yeah.
LJ, do you want to talk about it?
Sure. So one thing that I try to remember when I'm talking about negotiation is value. And there, you can get valuable things out of a job besides just money. So, for example, with our upcoming fall series, Camille reached out to me about hosting it. And she gave me a number, and I said, that's all right. You know, that's a cute little number. You know, maybe we could get closer to this. And, you know, the reality is that under certain circumstances, there's just no additional money in the budget. So what we did instead was I proposed a production arrangement where we could co-produce the fall series. And so even though the amount of money is the same, I still have found a way to get even more value out of the program by sharing resources. And now we share some of the administrative responsibilities. And also now I get to tell everybody about my business, Maroon Arts and Culture. And so even though the amount of money it wasn't able to move, we found something where I could get a little bit more value and we could work together collaboratively on it. So, and you know, and it's something that I've done before. If there's a theater project that I'm very passionate about, that I really want to work on, and they're like, well, this is all we can pay you, that's fine. Maybe we could co-produce. And, you know, if I get a production credit, then that looks great on my resume, looks good for my organization. And I'm bought into the project even more now, you know, especially if it's a project that I believe in.
Love
So
that.
awesome. Yeah, no, it was great. And just as somebody who does get to hire folks a lot, I always really appreciate that. And that I don't want anybody to take a project or agree to something that they don't really want to do, or that they're feeling undervalued. So yeah, like let's rethink the way that we're working together. Let's rethink the parameters of it. Even if, like LJ said, the number can't change because that's all that we have, then let's figure out what's going to be mutually beneficial, or like there's no hard feelings if somebody is not able to do it.
And also having a great partner like Center Theater Group is really important. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, we're producing things together, but, you know, I was introduced to Center Theater Group through an assistantship program while I was still in my master's program. And so, you know, it's a good sign when you're doing an assistantship or an internship and the organization will pay you. That lets you know that they value the work that you're doing and that they're not trying to, you know, mess people over. And so that was my first impression of Center Theater Group. And so since then, I've done some other things with them, but they've always been open to talking to me about money, and I don't feel uncomfortable when I bring it up to them. So, you know, it pays off to have a great partner. And also too, I see that some people in the chat are wanting to know about language to use when you're negotiating. For me, I'm just like, thank you so much for your offer. This sounds great. But according to my calculations, I was hoping that based off of this many hours and these job responsibilities that we could get closer to this number. And then, you know, you just put it out there. You just got to say it. You guys have any advice on language?
I would say, like, also thinking about, like, well, my regular rate is, girl, you could have, nobody really knows what your regular rate ever really was or is or should be. So you can always make that decision for yourself, but also make sure that it's backed up. Like, you can't just be throwing out random numbers like, I'm just, no, you're supposed to pay me $1,000. It's like, what am I getting? You're just doing this one little thing. Like, okay, what's all the other stuff that backs up why you deserve that amount? So you have to have numbers, but you have to have like reasons for your numbers, and you have to back those up. And sometimes, like, I'm a little like what they call petty in emails at times. So like, but I'm professionally petty. There's a difference. So I like to educate people through emails. I like to help them see the full picture of the thing they say they want to do. You want to value me? Thank you for that offer. So here's some reasons why, you know, why I've worked with this client, and this is why my rate is now this. Can you match that? Or if you're working with a one-on-one being hired for a position, and it's like, thank you so much for the offer. I want to take a moment to just kind of consider where that falls in line with where I'm trying to head next, and I'll get back to you with whether or not that number is going to work for me. And, you know, it's also just like kind of giving yourself permission to step into saying something that's going to scare you, but do it. Just like trust yourself.
100%.
What do I need to trademark? I have so many things.
Professionally petty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's my new podcast, you guys. Oh my God.
That's a really good
Love
podcast. You should
taking notes.
do it.
I can see shirts too, professionally petty.
Yeah. There you go. Diversify your income, right? There's another one. Podcast apparel.
Yep. I'm here for it, y'all.
I love it.
Yep, per my last email, come through.
for
Story
my
of my life.
last email. Amazing. We got a question in the Facebook group that a lot of people, it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. It's from Annie Lesser. She said, because everyone always says there's no one way to go about things. This is in like theater and creative careers. I often feel helpless when trying to figure out my next steps. What are some solid ways of evaluating your current situation, and what are the best next career moves? And a lot of people were like, yeah, that. So yes, it's in these careers, I know it's sort of liberating to be like, there's no one right path. You come by it in all sorts of different ways. But then the other side of that is like, well, but then what do I do next? Right?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's a lot in there. I feel like there's a lot to say. And I definitely do not have a concise answer, but I think for the most part is we tend to our brain likes to think 10, 20 steps ahead. And I think slowing down and saying what is it that I want in the moment right now? Like, what is the goal that I'm trying to make happen right now? And focus on that rather than it's important to peek your head up and make sure you're going in the right direction. But sometimes when we don't know what that direction is, we have to start experimenting and start with where you are now and where you want to go in the next, just for the next journey. And then taking that and taking stock and, always evaluating. I think Elena and I are very much in the coaching sphere. It's you make the step, you evaluate, you figure out if it's right. It's always about digging in deep, checking back in, making sure that it's in alignment with what you want out of your career. It's such a big question. I feel like I have I'm need to reread it again. But that my first instinct is to say, what is the next step that you want? And let's move towards that. Elena, do you have?
Yeah, I'm looking, I read the question and I was like, y'all, that's a whole entire
coaching. It's a huge
but we can start the conversation, because I also like to let people know, sometimes people think if I ask this super duper awesome layered question, it's going to be bomb. It's going to be beneficial. It's going to give me all the answers I need in life.
Yeah.
No, you need to start asking simple questions. Simple questions build complex answers. So if you take the approach of breaking down the big question, like this right here says, because everyone always says, number one, now we're talking about everyone, we're not talking about you, so we need to break that out, that there is no one way to go about things. Okay, yes, there's no one way to go about things, but there is one way for you.
Yeah.
I often feel helpless. Ooh, let's dig into that. Why do other people make you feel helpless? Also, Hamilton. When trying to figure out my next steps. So planning sounds like something that's difficult for you, and that is a barrier to planning. So we need to unpack why planning is something that makes you feel nervous, anxious, or scared. And then what are some solid ways? Okay, so you're looking for tangible action steps that you can implement into moving your career forward. And then let's talk about what your current situation is so we can discern what action steps you want to build in. And then, and only then, after all that I already said, it's 3 coaching appointments, we get into your next career moves. Because you don't know your next career move yet, because you're still worrying about everybody else. You still feeling helpless inside, and you're still trying to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other. So we can't even get to the career move because you still don't know what's going on in here. So that's sort of my approach, is let's break down the question in order to build it back up for you to get a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really solid advice from both of you all. I know for me, in yoga, they say that in order to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student. And I have found that opening myself up to doing roles that I wouldn't typically do has revealed things that I like that I didn't know that I liked. and it has also led to greater job opportunities. So for example, last summer, I took a job as a production assistant on a TV show, and it was hard work, but it was in a totally different industry. But halfway through the show, working on the show, it was Astronomy Club on Netflix. I don't know if y'all saw it, but halfway through, they were like, okay, so we need somebody to step up and do a little extra work in this wardrobe department. And it was like, oh, you a theater person. I see that you have experience being able to wear multiple hats. I see that you know what it's like to do 17 jobs under one umbrella. You know, can you step up and do this? And so I did. And then, you know, fast forward, the same person that brought me on to be production assistant on that show calls me, and she's like, well, I'm working on another movie, and you talk so much about your artistic research when you were working as a PA. Can you help me make some reference boards for this film, for the wardrobe department? And so it kind of like moved into, I went from something that wasn't in my field to something that was a little bit more of what I do, and that led into an opportunity that was exactly what I do. So don't be afraid to just take the job that's like, okay, this isn't exactly what I do, but it seems fun, it seems interesting, and it pays good money. So let me just do it and see what happens, and then see where it leads you, you know?
I completely affirm that. A lot of students I work with, I'm saying, look for jobs that are on the perimeter of what you say you want to do, because there might be an opportunity within those for you to discover something deeper about your talents that you can then transfer back into the industry you want to use, you want to be in. Oftentimes I say that, like with international students who may have to take a certain type of job, like there isn't really an option. And so like, what are things that they can do that still relate to maybe the major, so that they know like, okay, I'm still doing this work, but through a different lens. And then that just makes you way more well-rounded. Because if you're in a room of fellow theater makers, you're the person who has entertainment experience. You're different, and that makes you more valuable potentially.
Yep.
Yeah, unique, but more valuable because you have a different perspective. And so broadening your horizons and expanding your perspective is a big part of like career development. I've had like a bunch of different jobs where I said I'm never gonna work in a museum when I was trying to become an arts administrator. What's the main job I worked at? I worked at a museum. I worked at Curveball Cultural Center. I was like, what? But then I was like, oh, but cultural. Oh, I'm gonna make sure they get some culture. So like there's different ways that you can still do the things that you say you want. I said I never wanted to teach. What am I doing now? I'm a teaching artist at CTG. I don't know. It's like we tell ourselves these stories, these narratives of what a museum is. Like, I'm like, that's only for white people. I don't belong there. I can only go to California African American Museum, but I still go there. And then I bring that energy into every other institution I go into. So like, where do you find threads and connections between what it is that you say you want to do and what it is that you can do in different places and in different institutions?
Yes. And you know what? Don't be afraid to buy yourself some time, because we talked about this a little bit the other day, but I was a middle school and high school theater teacher. I did that for 5 years. And it wasn't until I got on the other side of that experience that I was like, okay, yes, I do want to go get a master's degree. I do want to become a professor. I want to look into dramaturgy. I would not have had any of that clarity if I hadn't detoured off my, career track for a little bit to go become a teacher. And even though I said I would never become a teacher, one of the reasons that I did it was because you only work 197 days a year. So I was like, let me take this job where I work less than 200 days a year so that I can spend the rest of these days figuring out what it is I really want to do. Yeah. And so sometimes you just got to buy yourself some time, master's program, 3 years. That's 3 years that you got to figure out what it is that you want to do.
Experiment, right?
An open mind.
I think leading with curiosity in your career is something that is so valuable. Like the people I always see who are successful, right? Or have these rich, I want to say not successful, rich, diverse careers are the ones who are always seeking out opportunity and are always following their curiosity. Like, oh, like, what is this? Like, oh, I'm interested in this. Why am I interested in this? Like, I'm going to go take a side project. I'm going to go create a side project for myself to explore this aspect. Or I'm gonna like, ooh, like I didn't really like that. Cool. Like now I know that. Now I know that I don't want to be in the industry, but I liked this aspect of it. Let me take this aspect of this career and let me add it to this next one and go use that as a jumping off point. I think we all want this like magic, like we're gonna like, I'm just gonna keep going down the career journey, and then one day I'm gonna get like hit over the head. I'm gonna be like, whoa, like my career, it's here, it's magical. I'm gonna be happy forever. And like that's not that is not career happiness. Like your career is something that you are constantly developing, you are constantly working on, you're excavating, you're learning, you're curious, it's growing, it's changing, it's dynamic. You're all dynamic. We are dynamic humans, and our careers are equally dynamic. And so if we try to pigeonhole ourselves or make it small or make it something, that's like, you're doing such a disservice to yourself, I feel like. And like following that curiosity is like, it is the best thing I know I have done like for my life. And like if you ask me what my 5-year plan is, I don't know what my 5-year plan is. I don't know.
5-year plan.
I'm doing this for now, and I'm going to do this until it serves me. And then I'm excited to like see where it takes me. Like I'm on this journey, I'm on this ride, and I'm just going to show up for it and show up with my whole self and make sure I'm doing the work to get rid of the mind grubs, get rid of the imposter syndrome, they never get rid of them, but move through them or use them as a tool for me to keep growing and moving. And like, that is my goal. That is my only 5-year plan. Right.
But leading with curiosity is such a helpful framework. That's what I've used too. And it goes back to this idea of like, I don't have that like title goal. And props to those who do. If you are really like, this is what I want to do with my life, I am sure of it. That's fantastic. But if that's not you, and you can open yourself up to like, I'm going to pay attention to what excites me and what stimulates me, then you're not so stuck on like, oh, what's that 5-year plan? It's like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I'm looking over there and I would enjoy that too. So I'm going to go and learn about that thing too.
I really want to talk, but you know, lawnmowers. So
I know.
Welcome to what it's like zooming from home.
Right.
But I do want to say that I want to offer up a different way for people to look at the 5-year plan. It doesn't have to be tied to career. I encourage you to think about what a 5-year plan looks like, tied to how you want to feel. Yes. So how do you feel right now? That's not where you really want to feel in 5 years. What are the things you want to be able to provide in 5 years? Like for yourself, for family, things of that nature. You want to think broader about a 5-year plan, not granular, because that pigeonholes you and stifles you into like one way of thinking. And we want to diversify your ways of thinking.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that, Elena. I love that. Thank you. Eiler, thank you. Because it's so important, right? And you're going to get that question. Sometimes it's like, I don't know how many managers, but sometimes managers love that question. Like, tell me where you want to be in 5 years. And every time I hear a client come, I just want to that question is so.
I'd be like, where you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah, where do you want to be?
You want to leave this job so I can have it? Boom.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Let's talk about that.
But I love answering it that way. I want to feel happy. I want to be able to buy a house. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to travel more. Like that is, I love that answer.
Yeah.
Then you work backwards and eventually you'll figure out what's the next job.
That's where your next step is, right?
Yes, it's easier to think about how we want to feel in those milestones than like, again, coming up with like
where we want to end up.
Theoretical job title, right? Mm-hmm. We have 10 minutes left.
Ooh,
which is amazing. And what I'm going to do is actually move us into an exercise. And our 3 guests have agreed to do this exercise with all of us. We are going to hope that my internet hangs in there while I share my screen. Everybody who is with us, I'm going to invite you to open a pad of paper or open a Word document. We're going to create a statement. And if you think that you might want to share it in the chat at the end, I would go with the Word document just so you can copy paste it. So I want to talk about what we've been doing over the course of the past 10 weeks, right? And I know that for those of you who have been participating for the whole 10 weeks, it's been a lot about getting knowledge from other people, or like listening to other people talk about their journeys and their knowledge. I want to encourage all of you to take that in, rest with it a second, and then let it go. Because for these last few minutes together, this is really going to be about you and how you're then filtering everything that you've heard and received over the past 10 weeks. So career advocacy, that's the title of today's session. The way that I view that is defining what you want and proactive ways to help you achieve it. So I'm going to ask everybody to get a little comfortable. If you've been a CTG intern, you know that I make them all do mindfulness practice. So if you feel like doing this with your eyes closed, you are most welcome to do that, but you don't have to. But I'm going to read these out loud, and I just want you to think first about what comes up for you with each of these. And I will also say that often when we do these exercises, it's actually a good idea to time yourself or to keep things short, because you don't want to get lost too much in like, oh man, I need 3 hours to think about that. You don't, it's there in you. So think about for a second how you identify professionally. You don't need to write anything yet, but this is like, I am a theater artist. I am a director. I am a change maker. Right? What are you? If you were going to go up to somebody at a conference and bravely introduce yourself and say, hello, I am so-and-so, I am this, what do you say? What's important to you, or what do you value? It could be collaboration. It could be creating anti-racist spaces. Right? It could be new work. It could be uplifting new voices. It could be family. Some of the things that come up for that. Think about what's your skill set. What can you do? And this goes to what the others have been talking about regarding like everything that you do informs your skill set, informs who you are as a professional. So if you were a server, what has that given you? Are you a good communicator? Are you empathetic? What kinds of jobs, gigs, or opportunities do you want people to recommend you for? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you are known for, right? When do you want somebody to be like, oh, LJ's a dramaturg, you have to call her for this gig, right? Yeah, and do call her for that gig. She's great. But when somebody says, hey, do you know anyone who does this? When do you want people to say, yes, I do? What kind of art do you want to be a part of? This is a big one. And I would encourage you to move beyond, I like musicals, right? Go a little bit deeper. Do you like devised work? Do you like to be a part of a new works process? What kind of art? How do you like your art, right? Do you value design? Do you value a collaborative rehearsal space? Are you a specialist or a generalist? We've talked a little bit about this, but thinking about, do you like to be, and I'll channel Michaela Bulkley again, do you like to be a big part of a small team or a small part of a big team? I like to be a small part of a big team. That's me. I like to be a specialist in what I do, but that's not everybody, right? So thinking through all of this, if you're like, well, this is getting pretty specific to me, that's actually really helpful to an employer, just as a sidebar. Somebody who really knows who they are is actually, it's easier to plug them into a team. If they're coming with these values, if they're coming with an artistic sensibility, right? Okay, so what we're going to move toward is actually creating a statement based on some prompts. So I just put this up there. This one happens to be mine. I am a theater artist and arts manager who is passionate about connecting emerging artists to careers in live theater. Goes on from there. Okay, so this is something that I revisit every few months to see if it still resonates. I just redid it a little bit yesterday when I was looking at this. but it's helpful to know who I am in a space. And you notice that nowhere, I don't even think I have the words arts education in here. You know, I don't have my job title in here because this is who I am regardless of what job I hold. Do you know what I mean? Just who I am as a professional and a human. So everyone, in our last, and we're going to do this quickly. We have only a few minutes left. I'm going to ask everybody to start to try to put some words together for this. So when you think about this for yourself, I am, I value, I want, I fight for, I enjoy, I can. And those are just some quick prompts. If there's another phrase that resonates with you that you want to put in there, go ahead. Something like I believe in. So we're going to do this quickly. We're going to take about 2 minutes. Just draft it out. Just get something down on paper. And if you're watching and you're like, she can't see me, I'm not actually going to write things down. There's power in writing things down. There's power in actually articulating this and then keeping it somewhere, even if you never refer back to it. So I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes looking at this. I have this Brene Brown quote here. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. Take a second, just put something down. Who are you in a rehearsal room? Who are you in a professional space? Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing and go out of this for a second. Oh yes, put together an intro for my LinkedIn profile. Yes, Ebony, that is a great application for this. So another few seconds. I am, I value. These can be as long or as short as they want to be. This is, you know, Ebony says LinkedIn profile. This can be the core of your artist statement if you're working on grants. This can go on your website. So I will invite you, do not have to share this, but anybody who wants to put this in the chat after you have it, and we'll all just collectively acknowledge that these are rough drafts and were created in about a minute. Beautiful, and I will lift up some of these. I'm a writer, producer, and an actor. Who values my audience's empathy. Beautiful. Seeks to make the world feel and make it a better place. I value friendship, family, and positivity. Beautiful, Derek. I want to be a big part of a big team. I love that. That's great. I fight for anti-racism and equal opportunities. It's really lovely. Yeah, the I statements can help you kind of tap into this. I am a strong, creative, driven, happy individual with a lot to share with the world. That's lovely, Deborah. Thank you. I'm a creative Asian American artist who values stories that highlight individual stories with an emphasis on the LGBT, Asian American, and adoption culture. I want to create comedic projects that help bring light to these individual stories. These are so lovely. And our guests, you all are welcome to put yours in there as well, but not obligated. And as these are, yes, snaps and claps, these are really lovely, everyone. I am a performer and director. I am an artist, actor, and entertainer. I am a storyteller.
Yes.
Beautiful.
LJ, I love it.
I'm a vessel that delivers stories otherwise untold. Love it. These are really lovely. Thank you all for taking the time to go through that exercise. And I just want to thank all of our guests so much. I could honestly spend the whole day chatting with the three of you. And I want to encourage everybody who is with us to hire them. They are all amazing. You all please free to drop your URLs into the chat. And for everyone, it has been so wonderful spending time with you all this summer. The fall series is going to pick up in October. LJ and I are going to talk about the sign up process and getting that all set up so that she gets any information that she needs from you all. It is going to be about producing original work, self-producing, empowering you to tell your stories. It's going to be great. LJ, anything else you want to say about the fall series yet?
No, I'm just really excited. I'm looking forward to it. I want to make sure that we're giving you guys practical information. Like if you want to produce an online show by the end of the year, we're going to get you everything that you need in order to get that done. So we'll be talking to people who have specialized in producing digital theater. We'll be talking about what you need in terms of marketing. So yeah, so just want to focus on practical application on working in theater in 2020. And my inbox is open. If you all have any ideas on what you want to talk about in the fall, I'm open to suggestions. And it's just create@lindsyajenkins.com. I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, feel free to hit me up.
Thank you all so much. And Elena and Serena, thank you for being with us today. It was so nice spending time with all of you. And for everyone, thank you so much for being here, and look for an email about the next series and a little survey so that we can get some information from you as well about how you engaged with this series. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, all of you. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, students.
Camille, for putting this together.
Yeah, absolutely.
This whole thing. Thank you so much.
And thank you,
honor to
Felipe.
meet all of you.
Oh. And shout out to Felipe for his chat presence throughout the series as well.
Thank you, Felipe.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
Bye.